Hello everyone and welcome back to Ross's Movie Reviews, the show where I review stuff that's mostly pretty good, maybe one of the best movies of all time, or a film that absolutely sucks and should remain in the depths of hell. Now, last week we obviously discussed Batman from 1989, and today we're going to talk about the sequel which came out 3 years later, Batman Returns from 1992. Now, I think I may have already mentioned this, but in case I haven't, I'll go over the story. So the only one out of these four films that I've watched in in its entirety before starting this marathon was the first one, the Batman '89. I haven't watched Returns, haven't watched Forever, haven't watched Robin, and I didn't even watch the '66 movie or the show. So really, for the longest time, Batman '89 was my real only exposure to what the '90s or the before the 2000s had for Batman. We also had the Dark Knight trilogy, which was massively popular, and some DC animated films and some you know let's just say missteps with the DC MU or sorry. Um, but now obviously again with the Batman which came out in March. I thought let's give Batman the attention. So you know I went back and obviously, well, first obviously watched Batman the movie from 1966, revisited Batman '89, which I still love to this day, and now I'm taking a look at for the first time really all the other Batman movies that were actually officially released in the '90s. Obviously, starting with Batman Returns, released on June 16th of 1992, which is weird to think that this came out in the summer when it's set at Christmas. But sure, do whatever. Um, and yeah, I didn't have copies of any of the other films besides a 4 pack that Warner Brothers released in like 2008. It was like the four film favorites line, where they released like a whole bunch of random films in like a 4 pack. Like they did the one for all the Superman movies, like the Superman quadrilogy in the '80s, and then they obviously did one for the Batman series, and then some other shit like a Sylvester Stallone collection, some bullshit like that. But yeah, for the longest time, those were the only ones I had, and then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna be serious about this, I gotta go and get the Blu-rays. So this was actually the first one I picked up, ironically enough, and surprisingly, I think I made a video about this, or showing this off, but I got this at a Winco with Superman 3. So yeah, a little bit of irony right there. Um, but yeah, so yeah, this was the first one out of the sequels that I did get, and I just watched it for the first time today. I watched it digitally, and because I redeemed the copy or the digital copy from the four film favorites, which I'm surprised that still worked after 4 or 5 years, possibly six. Now that I'm actually thinking about it. Um, and it is the new, I guess technically 4K transfer, but it is using the original sound mix because I did check it for after the first Batman review came out. I did check the audio after for the digital release, and it seems like they're just using the new transfers, but using the old audio mix, like the original audio mixes. So that is good. Um, and I don't know if anyone saw the comment I posted basically immediately after I uploaded the original Batman review. But I'm sorry that film was kind of, or not film, that review was kind of weird in terms of filming because it was a little bit delayed because of a cut that I made fairly early on. So the audio and the video were slightly out of sync. I'm very sorry for that, and it did kind of piss me off a bit when I found it out because it was my favorite out of the four so far. So it really did piss me off that it fucked up on that one. But now I know now to not pause in the middle of recordings because then that shit happens, and yeah, that's never really good. And apparently, this possibly could have happened before. So because I did cut around certain parts in earlier reviews, so this could have been a thing that was happening, and no one told me about it until I saw it for the first time when I covered Batman last week. So very sorry about that. It won't happen again. There will be no cuts, unfortunately. Even though I really wish they were. Uh, so yeah, unfortunately, you're gonna have to the rest of these reviews until I actually. Well, yeah, for the rest of these reviews, you're gonna have to be like stuck with me just being stationary for around 40 to 45 minutes. So sorry about that. But anyway, enough of me apologizing. I mean, enough of me griping. Let's get on to the review. So this was made with a budget of $80 million, which is, not surprising since the first Batman movie did spectacularly well at the box office. With only, I think, a $35 million budget, so basically doubling it for this film. Not really surprised. And domestically, it made over 162 million, and worldwide, it made over 266 million. Which is good. It didn't match the first film, which made about like over 400 million worldwide, but it still ranked third as the most popular film in 1992. So it did good for its initial release. Like obviously, it didn't do as good as the original, but it still made money for the studio. And this was, I think I mentioned it a few times before. But this was in kind of like the era where superhero movies, every single time that no matter what happened, if a sequel came out, no matter if it was good or bad, it was gonna make less money no matter what than the original. Take Star Wars, for example. When the first one came out, it did massively well, made about I think like 700 million, and when Empire came out in 1980, I think that made about like 400, 300 million. It still did very good at the box office with a $22 million budget. But, it didn't do as well as the first one, which was come to expected back in, that era. Now it's pretty common for, all superhero sequels to make 3 times the amount of money that the original made. I mean, look at Avengers, for example. That has made over $1 billion within a decade alone. So, yeah, but again, it wasn't uncommon for superhero movies to do, or superhero sequels back then to not do as well, but still make a profit. And, again, this was directed by Tim Burton, who was reluctant to return for a Batman sequel, but was eventually persuaded by Warner Brothers, who also told him, hey, you can direct this film and have basically full free control of what the end product will be. And you can really tell that this isn't a Batman movie. This is a Tim Burton movie. The first one, it was directed by Tim Burton, and there were some things that you can notice that's like, oh, it is a Tim Burton movie, but you recognize it as mostly a Batman movie. This film isn't that. Batman, it really feels like that by the time that this film was getting made, Batman started to become the side character, and it really. I've heard the complaint with the '90s era Batman films that Batman isn't the central character in all of them. It's the villains. Some of them I can tell, like this one especially, with the 2 main villains, which I'll get to. And with Batman Forever and especially Batman and Robin. And even a little bit of the first film, I can tell. But with the Tim Burton ones, I don't really look at them and say, oh, those villains aren't really Batman movies. They focus on the villains. I say those are really Batman movies. Those are Tim Burton movies. The Joel Schumacher ones are in a whole different category, which we'll discuss next week. But with these two, with Batman and Batman Returns, they really do feel like that they are Tim Burton, and they're in the Tim Burton universe. So, yeah. But anyway, enough of the production side. Let's get on to the story. So the monstrous penguin, played by, in this interpretation, Danny DeVito, who lives in the sewers of Gotham, joins up with wicked, shock-headed businessman Max Schreck, played by the fantastic Christopher Walken, to topple the Batman, who is again played by Michael Keaton. Once and for all, But when Shrek's timid assistant Selena Kyle, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, I nearly forgot what the name is or how you pronounce it, finds out and Shrek tries to kill her, she is transformed into the sexy Catwoman. She teams up with the Penguin and Shrek to destroy Batman, but damn, but Sparkfly unexpectedly when she confronts the Caped Crusader. So, yeah, it's you could really tell that by this film, it's you could see why people say, "Oh, it's about the villains." Because Batman, I think I've only mentioned his name 3 times throughout this entire summary, and most of it was just like, "Oh, they have to take down the Batman." But realistically, it's about the villains. It's about the Penguin, it's about Catwoman, and surprisingly, it's mostly about Max Shrek. Uh, you know, which was a made up character for the film and didn't even exist in the comics. So yeah. And you guys keep on complaining that the Batman '89 movie kept on making shit up. This movie has an entire character made up, and that feels like the soul, like the main villain, and it's just like they really decided to make a non Batman character the villain instead of making the two Batman villains, which they had and it's just like, not saying that the character or Christopher Walken are bad by any means. They are not. He is a great actor and he does great in this performance, but it's still just like, you really, you made Max Shrek the villain. Well, maybe not intentionally, but it does come across as he is the main central villain. Whereas, the Penguin and Catwoman are side villains. Which it really shouldn't have been. It should have been, Penguin and Catwoman both are the main villains. They both team up. Yeah, they conflict, but it's still like they both are the main villain, and then Shrek is a side villain trying to, work with both of them together, or mostly Penguin. But they made the movie as it is, and let's talk about that. So let's go over the cast. So obviously we have Michael Keaton returning as Bruce Wayne, or his alter ego Batman, and he took a little bit more persuasion to return for the sequel. Apparently he got paid around $10 million to put back on the suit, and again he does great as Batman, fantastic as Batman. They also I think they also did improve the character of Bruce Wayne. Whereas, the Bruce Wayne that we see in the original in '89 was more like, kind of like the sad kind of businessman who rarely goes outside. Besides as Batman, this time we actually do see him like going out. Besides as Batman, he goes out as Bruce Wayne. He goes to the meeting with Max Shrek. He goes out to talk to Selena Kyle, and eventually have dinner with her at their own place, and goes to meet with her at Max Shrek's party. So that's 3 consecutive times in a row for the span of, I think, about an hour. Like an hour and a half at least. And it's really, that is something I did kind of wish they did more in the original was, I mean, yeah, I did like that they did make Batman into like this kind of depressed sort of person, which in a way he kind of is. It really does show that, the loss of his parents really did screw him over in the head. But I feel like that by this point he's been operating in Gotham for a while, and he's gotten over that. So, but he still operates as Batman to defeat the crime. But he's more willing to go out and, do these business meetings and go to these parties, to be more social. And I do like that point. With the, especially that this film is just barely over 2 hours. It's really impressive that they managed to get all of that out. We have the fantastic Danny DeVito as the Penguin, who does a very good job. He does his best trying to put in this trying to be the Penguin as much as possible. But if I have to be completely honest, it is the character of the Penguin in this film is a bit forgettable. It, you know, the opening starts with him, as a child, and the parents throwing him into the sewers. And after the title credits, it cuts to 33 years later, where he's already a full-grown adult, and and he's already operating, a crime syndicate in, the under layers of Gotham, and it's just like, okay, how did he get to this point? It basically just cut out a big chunk of that, and that is something that I do wish that they did improve upon. And even in the film, it just looks, it kind of just feels like they wasted an opportunity with him, because it just goes from him trying to figure out, where his parents are, eventually finding out that they died. I think it was soon after they abandoned him in the sewers. And then going to trying to run for mayor, having that fail on him, and then he just goes kind of batshit insane, and it's like, all right, I'm sending all my penguins out with rocket launchers on their back just to destroy Gotham and take all all Gotham's children. And it's just like, where the fuck did that come from? So, in my opinion, yeah, the Penguin is forgettable, and every single time he's on screen, I was just kind of like, okay, I wish you were better, but you're not, so can we, please move on? To, Max Shrek, or even Selena Kyle, who's played fantastically by Michelle Pfeiffer, and who does have the most interesting backstory out of the two. Because she does get, made into Catwoman, because, when we first see her, she is this, she is Selena Kyle, and this is a radical departure, I think, from what she was in the comics, and even, previous interpretations. Because by this point, we've only had her interpretation in the comics, her interpretation in the show / the movie, and then that was pretty much it. Because the show, Batman the Animated Series, didn't come out until, I think, maybe it was already out by this point. Either it wasn't out, and I think either it was out later on in '92, or it just got started, and we didn't get into the Selena Kyle character in that. But by this point, we really only had two interpretations. Her in the comics, and her in the '60s show, in the movie. In the comics and in the show, I think they're both pretty similar, where she was, just, kind of like a selfish kind of woman in terms of Selena Kyle, and then obviously she takes on the persona of Catwoman. In this film, she is kind of like a nerdy kind of character, where she's she kind of stutters over words a bit, and is very, very, like I said in the synopsis, she's very timid, barely really speaks in her work life, and is just has a slight little, I don't know how to describe it, but just this slight kind of psychotic side of her, because when Batman saves her in that opening kind of fight, the guy that had her hostage has a taser, and she grabs it and shocks him, and she gets this kind of evil grin when she does it, and it's like, okay, you're slightly unhinged, I can see that. But it's not until she gets shoved out of the window and gets revived by cats, which is one of the most kind of disturbing scenes in the film. I will fully admit that right now. But seeing her psychotic breakdown in her apartment, where she destroys pretty much everything, basically gets out of a frying pan and starts smashing the walls, and eventually makes her a costume, which I think there were 6 of them made, and each cost around $1,000 to make. And in an interview, in 2007, for a radio show, Michelle Pfeiffer said that it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences in her filmmaking career, and that she never wanted to see one of those costumes again for the rest of her life. Even though it does look really good, her costume probably is the best Catwoman design that we've had in live action. We probably have had better ones in animation, but I feel like that this is one of the best interpretations of Catwoman that we've ever seen. In fact, possibly the best. Um, but yeah, but just seeing her like break and just go fully insane to the point where she's like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna become a superhero vigilante kind of character, is the most interesting part about this movie. Because again, Max Schreck is literally just thrown into the movie just to say, oh yeah, there's this businessman who's gonna be, dealing with both Catwoman and Penguin, but also having to deal with Batman as well. So it's just like my favorite villain in the entire film is Catwoman, because both Penguin and Max Schreck are underdeveloped, whereas Penguin is underdeveloped because they just he's underdeveloped, but goes through so many different plots where it just seems confusing to follow him. Max Schreck is underdeveloped because they just don't give him anything besides just being an asshole businessman. And then in the middle, you have Catwoman, who's like that perfect blend between like trying to blend her, trying to make it so close to the comics as much as possible, but also adding a slight little twist to it to make it entertaining for the film audiences. And I really do like that. But to obviously move on, again, we have Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken, who does great. We have the return of Michael Gough as Alfred Pennyworth, who is, again, my favorite Alfred in the entire Batman saga, for film, animation, games, whatever. Pat Hingle also returns as James Gordon, who, surprisingly, this one rarely pops up, because I think I honestly recognize him in only one scene. But yeah, he returns. I get it. I made a Batman Returns title joke. Okay, that was fucking stupid. Anyway, yeah, Pat Hingle returns. He does fine again. We have Christy Conaway as the Ice Princess, who makes a few scenes before she is unfortunately killed off because of the Penguin, which eventually leads to Batman getting framed for the murder. And what kind of leads to the second half of the film, which I'm going to talk about more about this later, but I do like that whole let's frame Batman sort of thing. Let's screw him over. And I really do like that, but again, that's for later. And finally, this caught me off guard. I was watching this for the first time, and I was like, who's playing the father? And I was looking at it, and I'm like, that looks strangely familiar to Edward Furlong. And this would have been like a year after you well, actually, no, not even a year, because by the time they were filming this, they were probably near the end of production on Terminator 2 anyway. So I'm like, how the hell did he age up that quickly? So that's why I believed for the longest time that Edward Furlong played the Penguin's dad, like the father of the Penguin. But then I looked it up, and I saw it was Paul Reubens, also known as Pee Wee Herman. And I'm like, holy shit, Pee Wee Herman's in the Batman movie. So that caught me off guard, and, I don't really think he has a single line of dialogue, but because, yeah, he only has, like, the few scenes during the opening, which is technically a flashback. And then the last time we technically see Penguin's father is on the gravestone when he eventually finds it. So it's just like, yeah, you didn't have any lines in it, but you still maybe go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out who the hell played you. When I originally thought that it was Edward Furlong, but apparently it turned out to be fucking Pee Wee Herman. But yeah, to go on to, I guess, favorite scenes. Honestly, yeah, no, I'm not going to say that this entire film is my favorite scene, because there are scenes that I do not like. And one of them I'm going to talk about actually right now, because I'm going to talk about the whole let's frame Batman aspect. So I do like that, and I like the fact that they framed him using the Ice Princess's death as like the catalyst, like, the Batman kidnapped the Ice Princess. because we found this batarang with blood stain on it. And so it's like, okay, that's good. But the scene before that, where Catwoman goes to be like, okay, let's team up on the Batman, and the Penguin's like, oh, I already got you beat up. Like, she was like, okay, let's frame him. How are we gonna do that? And he's like, well, I already got you beat. Check it out. And they somehow have the fucking blueprints of the Batmobile, which, by the way, I'm gonna just might as well talk about it now. It is the same Batmobile as the original, as from the first one, and I forgot to talk about that, and I'm so sorry. So I'm gonna quickly talk about it here. I'm gonna try and put it up to camera as much as possible, but I do fucking love this Batmobile. I'm gonna hold it like that. I fucking love how this Batmobile looks. It's so sleek. It's, you know, it's like basically the best interpretation of the Batmobile that we can have, you know. And even this one has the the fold out, cockpit sort of thing, so that you can open it up and then close it back up. Now this was this was a Hot Toys line when I think if Batman v Superman was coming out, and they did a whole bunch of them. They did this one. They did the '66 show. They did one for Batman v Superman, which actually now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was for Justice League. But anyway, they did the one from the Dark Knight trilogy, and then they did one for Forever, like the Batmobile from Forever, which I will show next week. But the next line that they did was, I think, for either another Batman movie or also for Justice League, and for the because they have two vehicles for Batman Returns. They have the the Bat boat, which unfortunately I was not able to get in time for this filming, but they also did release the armored Batman, or the armored Batmobile. So I can show these off side by side now, but it is 1-to-1, almost the exact same as like this one, but it's obviously in the armored form, which was released. This was shown in Batman and Batman Returns. Why did they put it on the Batman Returns label? I don't really know. And even if you look at the underneath, you can tell that it's slightly off. But still, I love the fact that they managed to. They said, you know what? Let's release the armored Batmobile from the Tim Burton ones, because that, no one has really done this yet. I think the only ones that did this was like Hot Toys. But that was like a plastic shell that you would literally put on top of the regular Batmobile. But yeah, so yeah, technically both versions of the Batmobile, even though one isn't really technically a Batmobile, it's just a shell that you would put on top of it. But yeah, both of these, and then you also again have the Batboat, which unfortunately, I did not get in the time, or by the time I was gonna film this. So sorry I won't be able to show it, but you could easily find it at like a Walmart or Target, or you do shop online for that shit. But yeah, anyway, go back to the movie. The Penguin somehow is able to get the blueprints of the Batmobile, and like puts like basically like a bomb on the bottom of it, or not a bomb, but like a controlling device on the bottom, so that he can, like, once the Ice Princess is dead and he goes back to the Batmobile, he's able to like control it around the streets of Gotham and cause terror, as like, oh, this is the Batman driving like a recluse and trying to kill some people and like bumping into cars. Obviously Batman is able to remove the device and then go into a smaller form, which I really do like, but unfortunately that one has not been released in like this sort of scale, and I think it's never been released in terms of like a little toy form, or in toy form ever. But yeah, I still fucking love this Batmobile. But yeah. But yeah, that whole, the whole let's frame Batman sort of thing, I fucking love that idea, but doing it in the way that they did, like, oh yeah, how the fuck did the Penguin get the blueprints for the Batmobile? And it's just like, really? That's what you did? Okay, sure, whatever. And it's just kind of fucking stupid. Um, but if I had to pick one favorite scene in the entire film, um, fuck, this one's hard because it's like I do like the I do like the entire picture as a whole. Um, but there's like just certain parts about it that I'm just not I don't enjoy as much as like other ones, but as other parts. But fuck me, it's really hard trying to pick a favorite scene from this film. Uh, I'm just gonna go with the first initial fight between Batman and Catwoman when uh I think it's when he's climbing up the building to go get the Ice Princess, and then she kicks him off the ladder, and then they start having that fist fight. I think. I don't know what the circumstances are for her to kick him in the face, and then kick his face, kick him off the ladder to pursue into the first fight. But yeah, I would just say that part is my favorite. Um, uh, Might as well talk about it now before I get on to the fun facts. The score. Uh, Thankfully, Danny Elfman returns to do the soundtrack for Batman Returns, and it is an enjoyable score, but it's not as good as the original. And the one thing that everyone says about the soundtrack that they always say like, "Oh, it's not as good as the original," and I could totally agree with this. It's not as energetic as the original. You know, if you listen to, for example, the end credits theme from '89, it's energetic, it's bombastic. You're like, yes, that was a great Batman movie. This film, it kind of does it in a more kind of gothic sort of slower pace, which granted it does work for Batman, and it really does, which is why I still love the soundtrack for this film. I just don't think it's as good as the original or as iconic. Uh, but also you could really tell by this point that he was starting to reuse kind of like a lot of cues from his or his score sound very similar. Like with this film, I could tell like parts or like very like similarities, like with Scrooged and like Edward Scissorhands, which I think Edward Scissorhands came out the same year as Batman Returns, so that's kind of suspicious. Anyway, I still love the soundtrack for this film, but it's not the it's not my favorite. It's certainly up in like the top 5 in terms of favorite Batman scores, but it's not my favorite. It's if I had to say right now which one's my favorite, it would either be Batman '89 or The Batman, which was I think composed by Michael Giacchino or Gijo, whatever the hell. Um, Damn, I've already discussed this guy so many times. Yet he has such a weird fucking last name. But yeah, either the Batman '89 soundtrack or the Batman soundtrack is either of my favorites. I'm gonna probably have to go for '89 and then the Batman's in like second. But yeah, no, this is certainly in my top 5. With the soundtrack, I should say. Fun facts. So the first one may surprise you, and it did surprise me when I initially learned about this, is that Burgess Meredith, who obviously played the Penguin in the '60s show in the 1966 movie, was originally asked to play the Penguin's father in the opening scene. With you know, you know, the mother giving birth to the Penguin, them being like, okay, well, we have to get rid of him, and them going to the zoo and throwing him into the sewers. He was supposed to play the father, but due to an illness, it prevented Burgess Meredith from taking part in the role, which I feel like that would have been perfect for Burgess Meredith to at least be in the Batman quadrilogy in the '90s, is to play the Penguin's father, because that would have been perfect for him. Yeah, but unfortunately he didn't. I think I'm gonna have to I'm gonna look it up real quick. I think he might have died the same year that this came out. I'm not. Don't quote me on that. Um, but here we go. 1997. That's when he died. So 5 years after this film came out. So yeah, yeah. But this would have been like a perfect role for him to return to the Batman series one final time. Is to play the father of the character that he, made popular back in the '60s. So, and this was a pretty funny one when I found this out. Was that at least 50% of the Warner Brothers lot in, I think, Los Angeles, was taken up by Gotham City. Yeah, that's right. That's how much Batman was to the studio. Was that they would say, okay, how we need this much amount of set room in order for us to build Gotham City. Okay, you get half of the lot. Are you serious? Yes, you get half of the lot. Sure, we'll take it. And so yeah, most of these I do not know if these are true or not, but these were the ones I just found the most interesting. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So final thoughts on Batman Returns from 1992. It's good. I really did enjoy this film. Is it as good as Batman from 1989? No. Is it as good as Batman Forever? A little bit more. Is it as good as Batman and Robin? Fucking pretty sure. Yeah, that film is fucking atrocious. Is it Is it as good as the Dark Knight trilogy? Yeah, most of them. Yeah. Batman Returns, probably better. Dark Knight, most likely better. Dark Knight Rises, yeah, this one's certainly better. Is it as good as Batman v Superman? Fuck yeah. That film is just weird and boring and dumb and bad. Is it as good as the Batman? No. I will fully admit that right now. But it's still a very good Batman movie that I feel like that you should put on immediately after watching the first one. So, there are some scenes that do drag and do annoy me, like for example, like I already said, the Penguins somehow getting the blueprints for the Batmobile. That's so retarded. And other scenes throughout, like the press was they saw bats and they immediately thought, oh, I mean yeah, in the first film he accidentally he tried to save the Joker, but the only person that was like, oh my god, Batman, got rid of Jack Napier was Commissioner Gordon, and even then there was only one scene of that, and that was right after it fucking happened. Whereas this film, there was a entire crowd of people. They, they just saw Batman at the top of this building, and they're like, "Oh, there's Batman. He is the one who did it." And then the bats fly around all over the place. And like, "Oh my fuck, it's Batman who did this!" And it's like it's just fucking stupid. But overall, it was an enjoyable experience, and I did enjoy watching it. So, it's not. I don't because of the scenes that I don't really like that much and do annoy me. I don't think it deserves any sort of A ranking, but I will, it deserves the top B rank that I could give, which is a B plus. So yeah, I'm gonna give Batman Returns from 1992 a B plus. It's not as good as Batman '89 or the Batman or the most of the Dark Knight trilogy, but it's certainly better than a whole bunch of other live action Batman movies that we've seen since this one. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little look at Batman Returns, released in 1992. If you guys want to see more content from me, make sure to subscribe. I have my username down there, and also go and check my channel out in case you like this sort of content. Or you can click on my profile right here. I don't know where it is because this footage for me is flipped. So yeah, go and check out my profile. Make sure to hit that bell icon to get notified when future videos are coming out for my channel. Also make sure to follow me on my social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Fairly regularly post stuff on there, whether it's, most of the time it's, hey, this movie review is coming out, or just, sometimes, look at my life. And, yeah, also follow me on Twitch, since, in the summer I'm going to be bringing back live streaming on a fairly consistent basis. So, and, yeah, that's pretty much about it. So anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this week's edition of my first Batathon, I guess to call it. Next week, we'll be discussing the first Joel Schumacher film, and obviously the first Batman movie to not be directed by Tim Burton and not to star Michael Keaton as Batman. Yes, we are going to be talking about Batman Forever, released in 1995. So, hope you guys stay tuned for next week for my review of Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and I'll see you guys then. So, live long and prosper. Out.